Welcome to Cutv News. We're in our second day of elections for the Concordia Student Union. The by-elections are halfway through almost. We don't have any numbers yet on the turnouts, but it seems like they're very low. We've been looking at tables, the voting booths in the different buildings. Turnouts have been maybe 1 or 2 people every 20-30 minutes. But we are with special guests today to discuss the changes in the bylaws of the Concordia Student Union. A lot of changes are on the table. Some people that are not happy with those changes within the student population, some are happy with them, but a lot of people don't even know what are the changes. They are so huge. So we have the special guests with us, Adam Kovac, who is the news editor at The Link, and also Joel Balsam, who is the news director at the Concordia radio station Cjlo. Thank you very much for both coming with us. Gonna start with our Adam. The Link has published a big editorial on their opinions on the changes of the bylaws. Some of those things that were brought up in this editorial were a little bit different than, let's say, the complaints of the opposition within the Concordia Student Union. What was the biggest problem you saw at The Link with the new bylaw changes?
Well, I just want to specify that it wasn't actually me who wrote the editorial, although I did sign off on it. All of our editors signed off on it. From our discussions, one of the issues that we found was with the abolition of the slate system. Our concern when we were discussing this editorial was that with so many counselors, especially in arts and science, and John Molson, maybe not so much in fine arts or in engineering and computer science, historically, people voted for an ideology rather than for individual counselors. There's just so many. I think it's 13 in arts and science alone. It's very hard to get a grasp of what 13 different points of view are on any subject. So while it's great to have that much representation for arts and science, it's a lot easier to know what you're voting for when it's labeled under a slate. So that's what we talked about. I think most people's opposition to the slate system was a little bit different from ours, but from our discussions, that was really our concern.
Joel, it is a big concern for The Link, and I think it is a very legitimate concern that maybe with the breakup of the election system now, the political party system that we have at the CSU, there'll be a harder time for people to know who they are voting for, and for the people that are running for the seat to actually be able to advertise what they're working on. Does that something that you think is problematic too, or?
I think these by-elections, the reason that they were changed was it was a very controversial election last year. You had 2 parties, Action and York Concordia, that went head-to-head, and in the end, it got very heated, and it was extremely, there was back and forth, they were throwing lobbies, and I think they both at the end, they said, we got to make some changes, and that is what these changes are trying to do. This is trying to assess that so that there's not so many lobbying back and forth, that they're trying to separate it. The problem is that there's an ambiguity in, can they actually be teams? Are they actually, it says that they can go as a team if they want to, but it's not in the bylaws. So that creates an ambiguity that will certainly make it complicated in this election if they do get passed.
The budgets for councillors running for elections on the CSU Council is a maximum of $300, I believe. How can one councillor be able to advertise enough for themselves with that budget?
Well, I spoke about pretty much the same topic with Lex Gill earlier this week last week rather, and from my understanding, their plan is to organize some form of councillor debates. So I think that's going to be the key way to get the word out. We didn't really speak so much about posters. I'm sure that's going to be an issue that definitely will probably come up when we have the general election. I'm very interested to see how that turns out, and especially how the CEO will be able to account for individual accounting rather than just two slates accounting. But I think that these kind of logistics are definitely going to be an issue in the general election. I think it's going to be something that I don't want to make predictions about. I'm very anxious to see how that turns out.
In other universities, some of the universities have their slates, the student unions have their slates of the executive broken down like the suggestion within the new bylaw changes. A lot of times there is adversarial positions ending up on the same executive. Do you think that this harms eventually the ability of an executive to achieve something within a year?
We've had that kind of system on council since we've had a council. I don't think, if people are working in the spirit of cooperation, I don't think it will be an issue. I think we see this at all levels of government around the world. We see it in our own parliamentary democracy system that we have on a federal level and on a provincial level. I'd hope that people are able to put aside any political differences they have to work together. You see it in even the American political system, where a president will name somebody from the opposing party to their council, generally not in a position of huge power, but they are there as a token. So I'd hope that at this level, where it's students and it's supposed to be a little bit more idealistic, people would be able to work together in the interest of representing students.
Do you agree with that? I mean, we saw at McGill University in the past 2 years, they run a system where each executive runs for his position separately, and we saw executives that are mixed from adversarial parties. And we also saw that in those 2 years also where the teams were not complete from the same team, that there was internal fighting, attempts at taking down various executives by the other executives from the team. This is, we saw how ugly it could be without, here last year with our elections. This is, in your opinion, not going to be happening here at Concordia too?
I think that's a great point, that quite possibly will happen. I think we want it to be, it shouldn't have to be that they're all friends and they're all getting along to run our university. They don't need to, they shouldn't have to sabotage just because they have a different idea. They should be able to come to a compromise. That's why we have elected officials. That's why we have a council with different opinions. The point, I guess, that Morgan Pudwell is trying to make was that they were trying to take some power out of the executive. So I guess that would be one of their ways to fix that, and it would be more power within the rest of council to make it where there is a lot of different parties. But I think it's quite possible that there could be Concordia politics, you never know. I think that it's quite possible people are going to be trying to undermine other people, even on the smallest points.
Finally, the slate system being abolished totally for the council itself, wouldn't this force the politics underground? Isn't it better that things are out in the open, whose alignment is what and what is their political ideology, so we don't have to deal with lobbies that are underground?
Well, I think that's an interesting point. Again, I don't want to make predictions of this sort of thing because I'm often wrong. I think that the point that they're trying to make with these bylaws is the system is broken and we have to try something new. And if this is something new that will actually work, then great. But if this is something that has to be revisited next year, if this is a complete and total disaster next year, we can change it again and have another by-election or another general election where this is an issue. So it remains to be seen. Anything is possible with this kind of gigantic overhaul, and I think it was done in good faith. I'm going to put that out there. But what the end results will be, what they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
And you know what? I'm going to end on one thing. We've seen a lot of students in our Vox Pops. I'm sure you've been asking students on the ground about the votes, but we've seen a lot of students saying, I have no idea about these bylaw changes and what do they entail. Do you feel that maybe the CSU executive, looking at now this is their half-term marker kind of, as an assessment, could they have done a better job advertising and informing the students about these changes?
I think that they could have maybe done a better job of outreach and education. I think they could have had a bit more public consultation. I think that they should have gotten their yes campaign off the ground before the no campaign got started. But at the same time, students have a duty to educate themselves. You can't force knowledge into somebody's head. So if students are really concerned about this, read the bylaws, read the old version, read the new version, go by the CSU office. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you about it. Read the link, listen to Cjlo, watch Cutv, read the other newspaper, I forget what they're called at the moment, and just try to get yourself aware, because it's not their job to force you to be aware. You have to take an interest, and then it's their job to keep you informed from that point on.
I mean, this is always going to be a discussion in democracy. We didn't know. I think that there was knowledge of the election being out there. I mean, there's been broadcasts on Cjlo, there's been coverage in the Link and in the Concordian, and we have talked about that there was an election. The question is, was it properly explained? I think that's a bigger problem. I actually thought it was great that they came up with the bylaws with the track changes, and they showed actually all the different things that they made, which was great, but I think it was too late. And it was also too late, I think, for these no campaigns to come out just a week before. We should have been well weeks in advance for these such a big changes, and I think both the yes and no campaign made a mistake by doing it far too late.
That's the word from the campus media. We are leaving one more day and a half for elections to be completed. Maybe we'll give you updates later on today at Cutv with the numbers of voters. Thank you very much, Adam from the Link, and Joel from Cjlo. Thank you very much.